Our featured guest tonight has had a storied career in television as well as film and across the genre spectrum in a way that saw him face off with some of Hollywood's greatest leading men and deliver the goods in many iconic stories. From Car 54, Where Are You? To the Emmy-nominated show Paris with James Earl Jones, to 3 Days of the Condor with Robert Redford, and Serpico with Al Pacino, he's done it all. Here to chat about his incredible life and career is none other than actor Hank Garrett. Hank, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I didn't realize I did all that stuff.
Yeah, as we get older, we start to forget all the things, right? So, as I recall, you grew up in Harlem. What was it like growing up there when you were a kid?
Oh my God. I lived on the street. Absolutely. Slept in cardboard boxes, myself and another a friend of mine named George Washington Jr., if he doesn't mind my using his name. The two of us were hoodlums on the street. We kind of like fended for food. It was tough. It was quite tough, but it didn't seem like tough at the time because we all lived that way.
You didn't know any better, right?
Exactly.
Do you think your early life in Harlem prepared you in any way, or perhaps set the stage for the career you'd eventually go on to have?
When I tried to do some acting, or when somebody introduced me to a casting guy, and they were looking for toughs for a movie, and it kind of went from there. I okayed it, and I was in this film with a bunch of other bad guys. And the director said, "Where do I know you from?" And I said, "No, I'm from the street." He said, "I'd like to talk to you about, would you like to be interested in studying acting?" I said, "What are you, crazy? What is it going to pay?" And it started that way.
How did you get into fighting, wrestling, and weightlifting in the beginning? Was that out of pleasure or necessity?
Started weightlifting. A friend of mine had a set of weights, and we would train on the roof. We worked out, and I met a gentleman who was a pro wrestler. His name was Judo Gene LaBelle. He turned out to be world champ judo jiu-jitsu. And he got me interested in speaking to a couple of people about possibly being in a movie or a series. And that's how it kind of started. At one time, living on the street, I got my nose busted when I was 9. And I didn't know how much about defending myself. And I met a gentleman who was into martial arts. And I became a student. And so I was studying things like Taekwondo, Hapkido, Sansu, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu. And I became quite good at it. Gene LaBelle got me into pro wrestling. And I became Hank Daniels, the Minnesota farm boy. Never saw Minnesota, never saw a farm in my life. But here I was on television, wrestling. I was a pro wrestler and quite good. Met a bunch of other pro wrestlers. And they said, "Have you ever thought about getting on television or in the movies?" And I went, "Are you kidding me?" Wound up meeting some people that were involved, a couple of directors. Next thing I know, I'm doing a television series. And it went from there. Suddenly, I'm one of the stars of a show called Car 54, Where Are You? And as it happens, I'm the only one left from that series.
Wow. Is it true Sammy Davis Jr. had some part to play in your finding work and staying out of trouble? What's the story there?
I had a chance to get up to a theater in New York, and I had a shot of doing my act because I started talking about the neighborhood. And here I am working the Apollo Theater in Harlem,
It's a
talking
tough
about,
crowd.
yes, an amazing group. Someone told about Sammy Davis Jr., about this guy, me. Sammy Davis came backstage, and I was sitting there in awe. I knew who he was. This a big star. And we became friends. And went to his home. I was invited to his home. And one of the things that I had to do for him, it was a Puerto Rican airline pilot. So it's, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your flight commander welcoming you to flight 602, which also happens to be the number for today. People played the numbers in the area, and I wound up appearing at the Apollo, doing what I do and doing the Puerto Rican airline pilot because I was raised by a Puerto Rican family. So it was, wow, it was amazing. I could not believe what was happening. Here I am, this street hoodlum who's appearing at the Apollo Theater. Well, and it went from there.
Was it any surprise at all to your parents when you told them you were going to start performing comedy? And what really made you decide to give it a go? Was it out of necessity, or?
I had kind of a strange way of looking at things. I would find things very funny. I turned tragedy into comedy for myself. It's the only way to survive. And I became a big hit in the neighborhood because I talked about everyday things, playing stickball, stealing from the local candy store. And they came to see me, and I was out of my mind. I couldn't believe. And I was getting paid to do that. I did that on the streets, the comedy, mostly to save myself from a beating. Another gang would come into my neighborhood, and they grabbed me immediately because I was one of the bigger guys there. Mm. And I started telling jokes, and it saved me from a terrible beating. I said, oh, wow, comedy pays off. So that's how it all started for me.
It's kind of incredible to see how your career combined two almost polar opposite arenas, comedy and drama, comedian and wrestler. I mean, I'm sitting there going, geez, what do I make of those combinations? When did you decide to start auditioning to be an actor? What was the impetus there?
When I was also a cop for a very short moment. I became a cop because I couldn't stand what was happening to people in the neighborhood. If a cop came through, he didn't do anything other than, stay in the car and leave. Yeah, okay, sure. Mm-hmm. So you got robbed. Oh, yeah, well, all right, okay, give me your name and address. And of course, when they left, the cop tore up the information. And I thought, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to become a cop. I'm going to make a difference. I became a cop, and hoping to be sent to my old neighborhood, I did momentarily. The next thing, because I was a comic, I was doing shows for the police department, and I wasn't doing anything to help anybody on the street. So I left the police force and became a comedian. I wound up being Tony Bennett's opening act for 4 years. And so it went from there.